Welcome to Femme Lead, the podcast on female leadership and role models. This show aims to inspire and equip you with the tools you need to navigate your career plans. Femme Lead brings inspiring career perspectives and strategies to guide your path to success. Your host, Alexandra, will interview role models on new exciting topics with each episode. If you like what you hear, give us a review and subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform. Enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Femme Lead podcast. We are back with another cool interview, this time interviewing a Chief Product Officer, a true leader and an inspiring role model. Alexandra Lung is an internationally recognized product leader, C-suite executive, public speaker, corporate advisor, and leadership mentor. Her experience spans international roles in large companies and high-growth tech scale-ups. She started her career working as a consultant in strategy. She also held positions in marketing, communication, product strategy, and consulting in digital transformation. She is listed in the top women in product in Europe 2018, the elite business women to follow in 2019, and top 25 product-led growth influencers in 2021. Alexandra is passionate about building great products that have a positive impact and drive exponential growth for the business. She's always looking for ways to grow and to empower the people around her to grow. Today, she will discuss about career development and how to navigate your career path. Alexandra prepared valuable advice, and she will give us her step-by-step process to find your next professional adventure by putting yourself first. Let's welcome Alexandra Lung to Femme Lead Podcast today. Hi, Alexandra. It's really a pleasure to have you here. I'm super excited. I've been waiting for this interview to happen. And yes, how are you today?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me here. How are you?
I'm actually super inspired by your career path as we speak. I just saw on LinkedIn that Alexandra was invited to yet another conference, and I've been following her. I've been following her on LinkedIn, and also, of course, her experience online. And today we're here to talk about navigating your career path. And when we were having the intro call, Alexandra told me that she would like to prepare because there are some key things that you learned, Alexandra, in your career path that you think can be wrapped into good advice. And I'm super happy and also kind of humbled that you decided to spend this hour with us, because I do know that your advice is going to really strike some of our audience members who maybe are wondering how to take their next professional step, how to ask for maybe the next leadership role. And I'm actually super interested in understanding how did you decide to move past industries and past roles in your career path. So should we start with the first question?
Yes, go.
Fantastic. So, Alexandra, you've mentioned in our intro chat, and something we've discussed is that you always consider your non-negotiables when you go to your next professional step. And now you are a CPO, you have your seat at the table, and you also said that was something very important for you. But since this is an interview about how to navigate your career path, can you tell us more about what are your non-negotiables, and maybe let the audience know also what does it mean to have non-negotiables?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. And I think in the last years, especially when navigating leadership roles and leadership decisions, like the non-negotiables part helped me a lot. Basically, the concept makes you think about the things that are really very important for you and without which you would not take the job, but also not be fulfilled in your job. And of course, you need to stay realistic and not have a super long list, but also be aware that this is not like this non-negotiable list is not a list that will stay like this for your whole life. Like there is no right or wrong items on this list, and it's really about what's important for you at that moment. And in my case, these non-negotiables really helped me make choices when joining or leaving companies. And for example, when I last changed jobs and I joined Uptime, my non-negotiables were, well, still are, to work in a company that already has a strong product mindset, which was very important for me to already start from a certain level of product mindset so that I can bring even more like the product magic there. Another non-negotiable was really kind of the culture of the company and the quality of the people. Really, the culture, having the culture of feedback, really good culture around feedback, of working with people that are smart but also very kind. And if I think what else in my non-negotiables, of course, the product, like as CPO, you need to believe in the product and the potential of the product. But also a last thing that was important for me was to be part of a leadership team. I wanted to have that seat at the table and have a cert. I felt I'm at the moment in my career where I really want to have an impact even beyond product and be there at those in these key decisions and have a say in those key decisions for the company and the future of the company itself.
I really like that you've mentioned some specific examples, because my next kind of thought on it, and I'm sure that the audience agrees, because, you know, everything you say now can be put on a piece of paper and be like, okay, I'll keep this in mind and I'll make sure that I ask the right questions. But my question is, where do you in the interview process or in the application process mention your non-negotiables? And do you mention that these are your non-negotiables, or do you kind of implement it in the discussion? Because I feel also the way you ask those questions is very important for the person receiving them, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of times, like in an interview, you'll be asked very early, like, what do you want next and what's important for you? So I usually state in a certain way my non-negotiables from the very beginning, and I also back it up with examples, like for when talking about sometimes why I left previous companies, or when I give examples of how I work today, I always give examples linked to that part. Like, for example, as I was saying, like culture is important for me, feedback and so on. Like I make sure that in my examples, I give these examples that back up those non-negotiables as well. I will not say these are non-negotiables, but I will not be able to give a super long list of everything that I want for the future. So I usually stick with these ones that are really important.
Definitely. And when it comes to being at an interview, let's say, because you did make some decisions about your next professional step at some point when you are now in when you were at the time in the current role. So do you use a methodology when you go to an interview? Do you think about kind of a way to wrap your experience in maybe bullet points or maybe areas of your expertise, periods of times? How do you approach that part of finding the new job for you?
Well, I think there are two main things. Like the first one is when I present my experience, and it's something that I advise a lot to the persons I coach and mentor as well, is to really tell stories about it. And a lot of times, like when we do something, it seems very normal and we're very modest about it. And I have seen this a lot with women as well. We're like, oh, I've done this, and I'm like, this is whoa, like you should tell the story around it. So I think it's really for each of your experiences, tell the story. Like tell the story of why you've got there, what were the challenges, what you achieved, the fact that it was easy or not easy. Like most of the times it's not easy. Really make the person in front of you be there with you in the story and be like, oh wow, you've actually done all that. And so I think for me, this is one of the first things, like really tell genuinely the story. And while telling the story, I think it's also important to be very honest and transparent. Like I think if you're not honest and transparent, then for me it's like a double thing, right? Like if I say who I am, like the other person will be able to realize if I'm a good fit. If I say things that are not really truth, like or 100% honest with myself, it's pretty possible that in the end it's not going to be a good match. So so I think for me this part is also very important, of really saying very transparently what you want and who you are.
Mm-hmm. I love that part when it comes to you also not interviewing yet, but maybe considering whether it's the right fit from the beginning, meaning that you have some initial conversations and you're like you said, do I like the product? Do I feel like the team is, the team that I see myself growing with professionally and so on? How do you check for that? What do you advise the audience that's like, I don't know how to look for this, subtle maybe things around the next opportunity?
Yeah, I think the another thing that I do a lot during interviews is that, but it's pretty like natural for me. But I think it works pretty well. Is that I'm very curious. I'm very curious about the business. Like sometimes headhunters tell me like prepare a list of questions. Also, I don't have a list of questions, but in the conversation, it always comes. Like I really need to understand. So like a sanity check of the business. I'll ask about the market, the business, the business model, the numbers, their strategy of like how they want to grow, where they want to grow, what they've done in the past. So like for me, as I was saying, as one of my non-negotiables is to really believe in the product and be excited about the product. Like I always like I will ask about where they are, how they see, and in these questions you can also see how they think about the product. If they're very stubborn about one idea, if they've been iterating around experiments, if they just asking about clients, who the clients are, like what's the next target, is it the same, how are we going to grow, just kind of. And in these questions you can also see how strategic the CEO in front of you is, or the person in front of you is, and how they think about it. And I will kind of do the same and be super curious about other things, like the culture, and like how do you see how like how do the teams work. And I will of course not ask them like, okay, what's the culture of the company, but like just find those kind of questions where you have some examples from their side as well, and some stories from their side. It's like, as I'm like stories, I'm trying to understand better how they work, and it's usually around the things that matter for me. So my advice would be really be curious, have a few things in mind, like, okay, I think in product, it will most of the times be, understand the product and understand the viability of the product. And I think even more right now, like entering into this sort of crisis, it's interesting to try and feel how financially viable the company is. So you could ask questions like, when did you have your last fundraiser? Or even more in-depth questions about how they manage their cost, how they see themselves like going through these next years with growth, like which kind of growth, how will what triggers this growth in the future, how are they going to manage that balance between costs and revenues. And so I think it's always like put a few important items and then just go and ask questions on the spot. And this is something that works really well on the other side as well. Actually, a lot of times what I see is that founders see my curiosity about their business and the product, and so it's very positive for them as well. So I don't do this to sell myself. For me, it's very genuine, but for them it's like, oh, like we have someone, like we are already having an interesting conversation about their business. I'm already challenging things about their business. I'm already asking questions that maybe they asked themselves a couple of months ago, and they're like, oh yeah, I should look at this again. So it really creates a good connection already, and good insights for you to know if it's a good company to join.
Definitely. And it's also part of, like you said, the leadership team understanding the sort of interest you have, because not asking any questions at the end of an interview might also mean that maybe you don't know what to ask, but it also shows that you haven't prepared anything. And I feel that's super important for anybody to kind of consider, okay, if I really were to move on to the next step, what is something I really should know personally, out of curiosity about the company, like you said, the financial viability, next steps for the leadership team, how many people do they plan to hire in a year, what if they don't mention that, and then you are one of 100 versus one of 10. That's also an important part for you to understand.
Yeah, and I think also not be afraid to even challenge in the interview. Like I remember one of the interviews, I think when I joined Uptime, they were telling me, like, we're talking about strategy, and I was asking questions, and then they told, like, I was like, okay, how do you differentiate? And I started explaining, and then like the question just popped in my mind. I was like, and aren't you afraid of competition? And like there are some moments where you would be like, should I challenge this person that I know for 10 minutes about their strategy? But like actually it does create that good flow, and they know that you're gonna have in the leadership team someone who doesn't just like takes an answer and goes with it, that someone who really is a sparring partner for that, like creating that strategy together and putting it in place afterwards.
Definitely. And when you considered your career path, or when you were in maybe moving to the next step, or when you were thinking about how your career path will evolve, did you ever kind of felt that you put your career path in jeopardy because a decision that you took? And what did you do? Like, did you have these moments when you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that?
Mm-hmm. I think yes. I think decisions are tough, right? we always have this. The one that I recall pretty strongly is the decision to have a baby. Actually, it's the decision that I think, especially for women building our career early on, it's pretty instrumental. And for me, it came at a moment where GM position opened for France in my company. So it's interesting because actually I wasn't at the time, I wasn't skilled for this kind of positions, but I really wanted to apply. And at the time, my managers didn't know yet I was pregnant. It was very early still. And I went through the process, and I was like constantly asking myself, and even talking with friends, I was like, when should I tell them? Like, if I also wanted to have a longer maternity leave than we usually have in France. I knew I couldn't, in the end, like they couldn't have actually chose me for the job because of this decision that I took. But I was also like, it's tricky. Like, do you tell people interview in this kind of interviews, I'm pregnant, or do you wait for a decision and then you tell them? Like, is this something that is considered that you've hidden, or you just don't need to tell? So it was really a tricky one. And in the end, I was like, as I was saying, I wasn't skilled enough for this, so they found someone else. But for me, it was it was one of those moments where having a kid is definitely a decision that you need to live with as a woman for the rest of your career. I'm super happy with it. Like, I'm super happy with my daughter, and it's completely worth it. But I still, like, it's a decision that I still like balance every day in my career as an executive.
That's very interesting, because I feel that's exactly one of the reasons why some women are not scared, but maybe unsure about their career path, because they think that they will reach a level when they have to choose. What do you tell people that are in this kind of dilemma now? Because, having a kid is a personal decision, and some people don't want that. Some people want that sooner rather than later. And some people wait a long time, and then they feel like, okay, now there's really a limited window for me to take this decision. And they're really stressed about it. What do you feel like it's something that helped you in this decision-making?
I think it's very personal. Like, to be honest, there is not something I say to everyone. Like, in my case, I felt this became important for me, and it was a personal decision. And I really felt that was the important part. What I see with women, and kind of what happened with me at the time as well, is that I stayed in my current company for a couple of years before, like, afterwards going for a leadership position. Maybe I could have gone for my first leadership position a year earlier, but for me, it was at that moment in time what was important. I wanted a baby, and I knew I wanted it at that moment. I hear this a lot from women I coach, especially, of like, oh, like, I'm not gonna change jobs because I'm having a baby plan, and then they end up like for a lot of years in the same company, thinking, okay, so maybe at one time it's gonna be the moment, and this seems like a good moment. I think there's no right or wrong on this one, unfortunately. I'm trying to reassure. I can, of course, reassure people that, like, okay, you can change and be successful, but it's hard, right? It's hard to manage both at the same time. So it's really about how you personally feel about it, how much your family can back you up, your husband can back you up. There's like a whole personal context to it. So I think for this, it's just like kind of trying to understand what's important for the person at that moment, from the career perspective and from a personal perspective, and how they can balance it in time. Like, definitely. In my teams, I completely, like, it's something that I completely not encouraging, like, because of course everyone makes the decisions they want, but I'm super supportive of women that have kids, and of everyone that have a certain specific condition personally as well. So I think it's important that we can be very inclusive.
Definitely. And it's also reassuring to know that this conversation becomes normal, because I feel that for a very long time, we didn't even speak about the fear or the stress of deciding how to prioritize your personal life over your career for a period of time, even though your long-term plan is to get there, like become an executive and build a career, right? And I'm super happy to and open to discuss this. And I'm happy that there's situations where I can ask these questions and feel like, there's no right or wrong answer. So there's no recipe for success. It also matters, who you work with, the setup that you are in, and there's not really a way that you can say, okay, this is the best way to look at it, right?
Yeah, but I think it's still unfortunate, because I think I've seen so many brilliant women around me, and I was in the same situation even when we decide to have a baby, the moment where we tell our employer it's still tricky. Like, I've seen this with so many friends and so many women around me, when they're like, they don't know I'm pregnant yet. When should I tell? How should I tell? When actually this shouldn't be such a taboo question. Or even, I think, I didn't see that much in recent days, but sometimes even in interviews, like I think that's so misplaced. Like, people that can ask, like, oh, you're a woman, you're in your 30s, like, do you want a kid? It's like, God, like, when are we going to go beyond this? And also, I just remembered when you said earlier, like, I think a brilliant advice, like, when I was from one of the leaders woman leaders in one of my previous companies, like, she was already in her 40s, and she was like, she had an amazing career, and she gave us a very, very genuine advice. And she was like, if I would be back 10 years back, I would freeze my eggs. I think this is something that we don't tell women that much as an option, and we always think there's time where like career comes first or so. And I thought that was a very, very genuine advice that you usually don't like. It's not easy to be that vulnerable and to tell that to the people around you of like, okay, now I'm 40, I wish I've done that. So maybe that's something we can keep in mind as well, if we don't want to be pressured into making a decision too early.
Definitely. Thank you for touching on the subject. I think it's very, very important to discuss how our lives evolve outside of a career plan, step by step, position over position, because it's not like that. It's really a journey that will take you high and will take you also low in decisions and in obviously mindsets. But you did say that you want to reassure women that their career paths will turn out okay, and that this is an essential topic for you to kind of reassure. You are a coach, you are a mentor, you talk with a lot of people in product and executive positions as well. Why is that? Why do you feel like it's important to reassure women that their career paths will turn out okay?
I think what's essential for me is that really women can realize how big of a potential they have, and that they take chances and ask for that seat at the table. Because I've seen so many brilliant women that don't do that next step, or they don't ask for that raise. And I think this is something that needs to change. It's already changing, but I think there's still a lot of space to change there. And if we don't ask for it, or if sometimes it's really like we kind of second guess ourselves, like, can this be possible? It's really very unlikely that someone will give us a chance. It's possible, but it's way less likely. And I think also when you ask for a next job or next opportunity, this puts you under a different light. Like, look, for example, when I was saying that I asked for that GM position and I wasn't yet ready for it, this didn't decredibilize me, actually. This showed people around me and my managers and my leadership team that I wanted to grow towards leadership roles. And going through that process taught me what my blind spots were. I went through a process for a leadership position. Even if I wasn't ready for it, I saw my blind spots and I was able to improve those blind spots. And actually my next job was a leadership one. And it was also because I went through that path, even if I wasn't ready yet. And I knew what I need to change, what I need to learn to get to that next level. And a lot of times I think we still say, oh, like, I'm not, like, look, I don't have all those skills. I've never done that before. I cannot apply. But actually it's not true. You should go for it, at least for the learning of what the process is and what are the things that you still need to grow on. And most of the times, I think you'll be surprised that you'll get a job, actually, and you will deserve it, earn it, and nail it afterwards.
I love that because career progression is my next topic that I really want to detail with you here, because I'm very curious, what is your advice on approaching career progression? Meaning that how can you navigate role after role? What do you keep in mind when you look for a new position? And what do you keep in mind when you decide, okay, now it's time to look for that new position? How do you make that transition? Also mindset wise, how do you think, okay, it's time to go, if let's say you have a good situation at work?
How do you decide if you want to change? I think it's a lot about how, like, there can be a lot of reasons. Like, I know in the past I've changed because I felt that I was kind of touching a level where I couldn't really grow enough beyond that I've seen it all in the company, and in the current company maybe there are like not tons of other opportunities for growth. I think there are other situations where I think a lot of people leave a company, also leave a manager. If you don't have enough maybe role models or support, or you don't have a good environment. Like, unfortunately, I do, when I talk to different people, I can see that like there are not so many people that are lucky to have a good management and a really good culture they can thrive in. And this is something that can also be very consuming and tiring in time, and can even lead to burnout. So I think there are multiple reasons we can change roles. But the way I think about it, usually when I'm like, okay, how can I navigate my career progression, is first by really being intentional about your career progression. It's like, okay, what's next for me? And in order to do that, I usually think about a few things, or I discuss a few things with my coaches. And one of the first ones, it's linked to your strengths. So what do you do well, and what are your strengths, and find ways of leveraging them. I think a lot of times in the past, we've also, like, we were trying to find the things that we don't do well, and put so much effort into trying to improve that. And I had a coach actually that told me once that a rose can only become a better rose and not a daffodil. So I think it's even more important to know your strengths and to leverage those very, very well. I also think you should think about what you know already, like what are your skills, and for each of those skills, what great looks like, and really focus on finding opportunities in doing that even more. Also, I think saying it out loud, like once you start having an idea of like, okay, I would like, I don't know, for example, when I knew I wanted to become a manager, I told this to my manager, and they helped me with tips. Or once I said it, once you say it, people help you with different opportunities, or they see you differently. And also once you say it, it kind of becomes more concrete. So I started observing the different managers around me in a very different way. And I think something else that helped me a lot grow and also navigate in time my career progression was feedback. So really asking for feedback. For example, when I decided to do public speaking, like quite a few years ago, I told this to the people around me. I was like, okay, I want to go to public speaking. My next conference, 700 people in a few months. Oh my God. And it was the very first time I was doing this. So every time I was doing a bigger presentation at work, I was asking a couple of people afterwards, like, what did you think about it? Like, what can I do better? Do you have any tips that I could improve this? And little by little, I was able to improve. Or even if you don't have a specific thing that you already know you want to improve, you can go and look for 360 feedback from peers and or from your manager, and see how you can grow on either on the things that they already tell you you're good at, or at things that they might suggest you could start doing.
Super, super, super useful advice. You also mentioned about applying for roles that seem out of reach earlier, to go through that process. And something that I would like your advice on is when you were having this thought about applying for a new job, let's say that you apply and then it's not successful in the first try, but then you apply for a position and then you get something that is, let's say, one level below. So you apply for something and you know that you can do it. And then let's say it's not a principal position, but you get a manager position or a associate position. Can you tell us how do you advise people to negotiate this kind of situation that they're in? Because there are situations where you already have the experience and then you apply for a position knowing that you would be skilled for it, and you are offered something different because, I don't know, there's different, you need one more year of experience, or you haven't managed 3 people or whatever.
Wow, that's a tough one. I think my first thought is to go for the kind of the bold approach, but I think it depends, right? I mean, it depends I think in product we have a lot of choices, so we should be in a good position, but it depends on your personal situation, right? If you feel you can go for it. My first thought was to really, I would say, not accept, like to try to say, well, super interesting, I love the opportunity, I'd love to work with you, but I've already done this. It needs to be successful, like it needs to work well for the company and for myself. And I know I need, like, if I want to grow, I need that role, and kind of really explaining it from a win-win situation, from what you've done before. And I actually, this happened to me, well, not happened to me once, but like when I was, first time when I came to France, I was an intern in a company, and they offered, like, I still remember we were in a meeting and my boss told everyone that I'm staying for 1 more year, but he actually didn't talk to me before. And I said, like, oh, I don't think so, or something like that. And then like he came to see me and he was like, we're so happy with what you're doing. Like, why did you say that? And actually I very genuinely, like, I explained to him that like I was an intern here, but like I had like 1 year of experience in consulting in the past. And actually the job that they gave me here in the first 6 months was interesting, but was kind of under my skilled for what I was doing. And actually, the next day, he offered me a position of a senior PM that managed whole Africa and the expansion to the whole continent, and choosing the countries and building the strategy and the partnerships for that. So I think you should say it, or if you accept it, you should do it under certain conditions. Like, okay, I'm taking this role, but in 6 months, I want to review. I want clear objectives. I want a clear definition of what the next role means. And I want to review it and make sure that you can get to that part. But I think this is trickier because a lot of companies still don't have a clear career path. Like it depends where you go for. Or you can have companies, like very, very big companies that yes, they do ask you for 10 years of management to become a manager in their company. In that case, I guess, like, do you want to put that name on your CV and not be a manager, or is it more important for you to have that management experience now? I think it comes back to what's important for you right now. But my advice would be, don't shy away from, you won't seem too cocky. Like, of course, you won't say I'm too smart for this, but just find the right words to explain that you can do better, you can do more.
I love it. I think it's super, super valuable advice and very straight to the point in terms of how to approach the situation, because a lot of people, especially women, are uncomfortable saying something different than what let's say, a red thread of the conversation has been. And you do need to stand up for yourself. And in this case, it's standing up for what you believe is your next professional path, and not necessarily changing the plan, because like we've discussed also together, we know that the plan is just a plan, but also kind of making sure that no matter your decision, you are okay with it and you're not compromising on things that are very valuable to you, going back to non-negotiables, and feel unfulfilled, but you accept it because that was the opportunity or the option, right? And I would like to talk a little bit about how do you then kind of advise people that, let's say, they do get the role that they want or a similar setup? How do you manage the new role? Like, how do you start your, new role management as you progress in your career?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I think a lot of us already have a plan. Usually when you join a company, especially as a leadership, like you will have your 90 days plan and all those things. I think the first thing for me is to really understand that the plan is just a plan and be ready that the reality will be very different. Even though you've done a lot of interviews, you have a lot of ideas about the job and the people. And so just be ready to adapt a lot at the very beginning. And something that you should definitely not underestimate and spend time from the beginning is building relationships. I think, of course, people want to see results, and you'll need to show results and get down to it, but also build those relationships. Like go talk to people and help them out. Create an initiative with someone from with another leadership team member, or try to find those wins together very fast and try building those relationships, because that's very important. And a lot of times people will remember, of course, what you do, but they will remember how you made them feel as well. So just kind of starting to make them feel you're a team and you make them successful, and you're successful and the company is successful. It's really important. And as I was saying, of course, there's the relationship part. It's also the fact of like, you need to make visible progress fast, and you'll need to kind of calculate it. Like, for example, when I joined Uptime, I had 2 months before the end of the quarter, and we're working with OKRs. So I knew I had 2 months before reorganizing the teams. And for that, I needed a new strategy. 2 months can seem pretty short because you need to onboard and build relationships. And so, but I knew I needed to do a certain list of things linked to the strategy, even though the timing was short, so that I can organize my teams. I couldn't have waited 5 months to organize my teams and they give them a better direction. So I couldn't do my whole like strategy thing as I wanted it, but I spotted those main things where the leadership team needed alignment on, that will help me drive my strategy and to afterwards implement it with the team. And that progress was fast. Like 2 months later, I already had that part of the strategy. I already had the new reorg with the CTO, and my teams had clear objectives for the next quarter. So that was really important. But in the same time, I think you shouldn't forget that you're still onboarding when you join a new company. So don't forget to, as I was saying before, for the interview process, continue being curious and asking tons of questions. I think just going there and being super opinionated about things when people are there already for so long before you won't be the most helpful thing. So really ask tons of questions, be curious, go see clients, go see customer support, go see how your peers work. Just ask tons of questions. And maybe a last one, as a leader, I think it's also super important to understand what the company needs most. So usually when you join, you always kind of have the people, process, and product. So I get this a lot of, like, when people ask me, like, do you do strategy or org first? And it depends, you need to see how solid your strategy is, and can you build on top of that for the next months and create, like, readjust the org and the processes, or that direction is really not clear, and then you need to work on the strategy first and then organize people behind that. You cannot do everything at once, and you need to pick your battles. And I think that part is really key at the beginning, in a position as a leader, to understand what you need, where you need to move the needle on, and to have that plan really clear on, like, okay, now we do the strategy, afterwards we do the org, or now we're hiring people, and afterwards, like, we can see how we grow the thing. And of course, ask for feedback. Like, you can make this kind of analysis, but ask your CEO or your manager of, like, what they think it's important, right? It's always going to be a mix, and really share this plan with them. Like, it shouldn't be a surprise. Like, it should be like, okay, now we're working on this organization, on this strategy items, because this is going to help us with this next, and then in 3 months it's going to help us with that. So make it intentional, but make them be involved. And I think, if possible, make it a common win. Like I've done a series of exercises just after I joined Uptime with the leadership team, and I prepared a lot, each of them, to what we needed to do in the workshops. And at the end, I remember one of them told us, "Oh, this was easier than we thought." They really felt it was like common, like we all had a big win, and that it wasn't that hard. Actually, it was also because I did all that like prep work, and in the end, it was super positive because we were all aligned and we all felt, yeah, this is so good. So I think creating this kind of situations, it's important, well, not only at the beginning, also afterwards, but especially at the beginning.
I love it. And an additional question that arose as a result was stakeholder management and how to create these relationships at the beginning of your new role within a, let's say, a new company. Do you have any advice for how to kind of win this relationship building strategy from the beginning? Because like you said, you are an expert in your field, let's say, when you join a new company as an executive or as a leader, and then you also need the buy-in of the rest of the members at the table, and you also would like to know more about their individual, strategy and focus. How do you merge all of these facts?
I think it's very important to listen a lot. Like sometimes we kind of feel we want to show know what we can do very, very, very fast, but it's also very important to listen. And I think something I usually do when you first meet people, I think tell them a part of your story. Like don't just jump into like, yeah, I'm the CTO, I'm the CPO, I'm the now let's jump to it. Like kind of take a little bit of time to really tell some stories, find out things about the other person in front of you. Of course, it's not going to be an hour of chit chat, but just taking that time for intros. Like I know in the past, sometimes I thought, oh, like people will see what I can do. Like I don't need to kind of share what I've done before, but it does make quite a difference. And then I sometimes have something that I call like a stakeholder interview. And there are some questions that I think you shouldn't like. I start from like understanding their stakes, their teams, how long they've been in the company, like just like, kind of the regular things. But sometimes I can go through questions that can seem a bit like touchy, but actually people react very well to them. That can be something like, what keeps you up at night? What are your biggest challenges? Or at the end, really going for, what is the first thing we can do together to make this better for our teams and for the company? So I think going through these steps of like knowing each other, understanding their stakes, asking them questions that maybe they don't like when they first meet someone, it's like, oh, my fears, like, well, but actually people open really well to that. And then finding those first wins already together, and ideally even having some next steps of like, okay, let's do that. Let's start this initiative and see how it goes.
Definitely. I love it. I think you gave some very, very good advice. And I would like to wrap up our interview by asking you if, looking back at your career, looking at all of the advice that you shared with, during your coaching practice or by being a mentor, what is one piece of advice that you think everybody should take from your experience?
I think one piece of advice for me would be to really go for it and ask for it. Even if you don't feel completely ready, ask for it. And I know in my case, it's something that I would have done different even earlier in my career, is that, long time ago, I was first PM of a spin-off. And after a couple of years, I was managing everything from the strategy to implementation. So, and after a couple of years, they opened a director position. And I was thinking, oh, like, I won't ask for it. Like I was taught since I was little, right? Like people see how good you work. Your work is like you shouldn't ask for it. Things will come to you. And actually it didn't happen. Like they hired someone else. Well, the expectations were also very weird, somehow not well defined. The person ended up leaving a year later, and so did I. And when I left, they did tell me, tell us the job and the salary you want, and we'll do anything to have you stay. It was too late for me, but for me the lesson was, and I had a few questions that a few friends had asked me during that year, like, what do you think would have happened if you would have asked for it? And I didn't know. I didn't know. And that bugged me. I was like, next time I'm gonna ask for it. And I think, again, asking for it will put you in, even if you don't get the job, will put you in the position of like, this person wants to do more in the future. This person, even if it's ready or not today, we can help this person get ready. And it already takes you a step further.
I love it. It's also about, you've mentioned it a couple of times in the interview, it's about letting others know about your own kind of plans in terms of development, because how would they know that you wanted the director position? Well, you've been there for a while and you obviously wanted to progress in your career, but like you said, no one really said, oh, then we will not post this job, we will just promote you for it, right? And I feel like this is something that happens, and we wait maybe for that moment of discovery of like, you've been all the time the person that was meant to do this role, and then it doesn't happen, and you're maybe even a bit disappointed. So then instead of having the opportunity to kind of go to the next level, you're also a bit like, they don't really appreciate me here. And some people do go into this state of like, I'm not appreciated, or they don't really care much about my career development, when the truth is sometimes people do have blind spots, and so do we as professionals. So then if we don't discuss it, we will not be having this transparent conversation about what are the opportunities here, can we build something together. And to close off our very amazing interview, I think what I understood also from my product career and before that business development is that we make a lot of scenarios about what could happen wrong, and not so many scenarios about what can happen right for us, like in sync with what we want. Do you feel the same about like how we make decisions sometimes?
Yes. I think we're very good. Our brains are very good in finding all those reasons why something won't work. And I think we can also just try and minimize that a bit in our brain, and be like, yeah, like for example, it's like, okay, apply for the job. What can happen? They will say no. Then it's the same thing as if you didn't apply. So just take those 5 minutes and apply. And if you do get that interview, it's going to be a good experience. Like, it's going to be interesting to learn something new about a new company, about the market, and then you'll see where it goes. I think we should take a bit off that pressure of like, oh, what if all those bad things happen, and really open up with who we are and what we want and what we can bring on the table. Fantastic. But do not forget what the other person brings on the table as well. I think it's also a lot of times needs to be a win-win. And I've seen this a lot, like even when joining a new company as a leader. In the past, I was very focused. Well, I'm still very focused in showing I can be successful. But you need in the same time to think if it's mutual. Like, are you happy there? Like, a lot of times we think so much of convincing the other person that we don't think enough of ourselves and how we are. Like, are we enjoying the ride? Like, are we doing something we love in an environment that really helps us thrive? And I think that's equally important. And it's something I've also learned in time, that this needs to be really good on both sides. And we need to focus on ourselves as well, and how happy we are in the situation from the beginning and up to forever.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much, Alexandra. This is amazing advice. I'm enjoying every minute of it. And I also feel like you were very specific with examples so that people understand different scenarios where, different conversation can happen and different decisions can take place. And how did you navigate that? I really admire your career, and also I admire you individually as a person, because I feel like you have this amazing energy that you bring to any conversation. And I'm super happy that our paths collided and that I can have you as a role model. Thank you so much for taking the time. This was really, really, really a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. This was such a great conversation, and it's been such a pleasure doing this with you. Thank you.
I'm super excited. Okay, I do want to close off with the final 5 fire questions, so bear with me just 5 more minutes max. What is one book that you think everyone should read?
Radical Candor by Kim Smith is a book that I love. I think it's a book that is great for managers. I think it can apply to everyone, because it really talks about how to talk to people in a very radically, but very much with candor. So I very much recommend it.
Amazing. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
I think it's an advice that I received recently when I joined one of my the companies I work for. I was talking to a board member, and I was actually asking for advice. I was like, "What do you advise me in my relationship with the founders?" And actually, it was really really interesting because he just told me, "Enjoy. You should enjoy," and it just kind of struck me into like, yeah, I'm lucky to do something I love, and to go for a next choice that like I don't have to compromise on my non-negotiables or things that I care about. So I should enjoy, and I should remember this every day. So I love that advice, and now I'm giving that advice further to my coaches as well.
Amazing. Who is your role model?
It's a tough one. I think I don't really have like one role model, but there are really a lot of people that inspire me. Just like just my mom for being a super kind-hearted fighter, Sheryl Sandberg for the lean-in approach and everything she's accomplished, Richard Branson, for how he's built up an empire from scratch and he still enjoyed the ride until now. Marty Kagan for being such a tech like product reference we all go to. Wow, the list is long. I can go on forever with role models.
Amazing. What would you choose to do if you were to have another career?
I'd be a psychologist. I find fascinating the way our brains work and how we, everything linked to the human psychology. And I'm super passionate about it. I love it.
Great.
I think I'll definitely do that if I
definitely see you as a person that people would love to come and discuss with and also get advice. So I totally see that career path as well. Yes. And lastly, if you could change places with someone, who would it be and why?
With my daughter. She's 3-year-old, and I think it's just kind of reminds me every day of how cool it is to be amazed and in awe and so happy, so truly happy about anything, for drinking water, from seeing a flower, from really enjoying those little things in life. And I think it's for me a constant reminder every day of like I should be switching places or doing that more and more, and I think we should all do. So right now I think I definitely switch places with her and go play in the in the school.
Seems very fun, and indeed, finding happiness and pleasure in like the small things is really something that we need to remind ourselves as we grow older, and we're like so focused that we shouldn't remember that a career path is also built out of pleasurable moments and enjoyment, and when that kind of doesn't appear that much, we should probably take a break and look a little bit within and find pleasure in those little moments. Thank you so much, Alexandra. This has been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I know that
definitely
we were looking forward to having this discussion, and thank you again for taking the time. This has been really a pleasure.
Great pleasure for me as well. Thank you very much, Alexandra.
And thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this interview, and stay tuned for more updates from inspiring role models.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Femme Lead Podcast. Share the news with your friends and follow us on social media at Femme Lead Podcast everywhere.